Hello and welcome to the Startup Speakeasy by KPMG in India. My name is Karan Marwah and I'm here today with someone whose brand I'm a personal fan of. We have with us Matt Chitharanjan, who set up Blue Tokai and has taken it to a different level, I would say, as far as coffee and what it means for Indian consumers goes. Matt, it's lovely to have you here today. Thank you so much for coming over and having a chat with us. Really appreciate that.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Really looking forward to having our conversation.
Absolutely. Maybe let's start with a personal element here.
Sure.
Let's get to know you, because honestly, I tried to do my research, but there wasn't a lot to sort of read up about you. I'd love to know your personal journey.
Yeah.
I know you spent some time in the US and you started out with a very different career path and then landed up doing coffee, which is great for us. But do you want to just maybe talk to us about that?
Sure. So I was born and brought up in the U.S. Actually, my father, he's Indian. He's from Chennai. He emigrated and he started teaching.
Where in the US?
Wisconsin.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I grew up in a very small town, very different from where I am now.
Yeah.
The town I grew up in was only 20,000 people.
Wow.
So I graduated, went to college at NYU, studied finance. Then I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was doing economic and real estate consulting there. And actually, that was really where I got into coffee. So during college, actually from a very young age, I grew up in a coffee drinking household. So my sort of progression kind of mimics what many consumers are going through.
Right.
Started off drinking Folgers instant coffee. Once in a while, we'd get better quality coffee from a local roaster. But then in college, I would drink Starbucks.
Yeah.
And that was purely because it was a functional drink. I just needed that caffeine hit to be able to study. But then when I was in San Francisco, I was exposed to specialty coffee, and so that coffee culture was becoming.
Which years was this?
This was in 2003 is when I moved there.
I guess this was about the time that this, it was taking off, right?
So this was really at that tipping point.
Artisanal coffee and...
Actually the first Blue Bottle, their actual cafe, was in a garage that was right around the corner from my apartment.
Oh, wow, that's a story.
So being exposed to that made me see how coffee could be so much more than just a functional drink.
Yeah.
How it's sourced, how it's roasted, how it's brewed, how it's communicated. These all have a big impact, and actually coffee has more flavor potential than wine. And people, write books
I didn't know that.
And then snobbery about tasting all the notes in wine, but that hadn't happened to coffee yet. So while I was there, I started roasting coffee as a hobby. Both my parents being professors, I thought I'll also become a professor. So then I went to grad school in Canada to get a master's degree, and I quickly realized that academia wasn't for me.
What did you postgrad in?
Economics.
Okay.
So I liked, but while I was there, I sort of got interested in international development, in economic development. So after that, I moved to the Middle East, to Jordan. I did a development project there for a year. Then I moved back to the US, working for an NGO that did development around handcrafts.
Okay.
I was doing monitoring and evaluation for them. I was living in Hartford and I was quite miserable. It wasn't a very appealing city for me. And so I started looking for new opportunities, and I saw that there was an opening at a place called IFMR in Chennai.
So from Hartford to Chennai?
Hartford to Chennai.
That's quite a leap.
Yeah. So the job itself was something that I thought was quite interesting. It was working on research projects of US and European universities, doing the on-the-ground execution in India. And plus, still half my family lives in Chennai, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to spend time with them.
Get back to the roots and...
Yeah. But honestly, I thought I would come for a year, and then I would move on to some other assignment.
And as it happens, that never happens, right? It never goes to plan.
Actually, I blame Namrata for that. Namrata was working at the same center. So we ended up meeting, we ended up falling in love and getting married.
So that's where you met, in Chennai?
Yeah, so she was also working at IFMR.
Okay.
So from there, Chennai.
Was it love at first sight?
Very quickly, actually.
Was coffee a common...
She was also very interested in coffee.
Yeah.
She was also very interested in coffee, but we ended up getting married within, I think, 8 months of meeting.
Oh, wow, that is quick.
So it was very, very, very fast.
And when was this?
This was in 2012.
Okay.
2012. So then after marriage, then I mentioned that I didn't really like living in Chennai, but her parents were living in Delhi. So we would visit, and I love Delhi as a city. I thought it had amazing energy. I love the history that it had.
Being a Delhiite, I have to agree with you, but why did you prefer Delhi to Chennai?
So Chennai feels more like an urban village to me. So like I grew up in a village and I wanted to escape.
Have you gone back recently? I'm sure you have.
Yeah. Now it's changed quite a bit. Now it's changed quite a bit. And I think in another 5 years, they're doing all the metro work and everything. It'll really develop into a really nice city. And Namrata would be happy to move there right away. She loved it so much. But yeah, so then we moved to Delhi, and this was in 2012. And then we were both at points in our careers where we were kind of tired of what we were doing and looking for a change. And having done mostly desk jobs my entire life, I wanted to do something very physical, like create something with my hands. So I looked at brewing beer because that was also a hobby of mine, but the investment required is very high, plus you have to deal with licensing and taxation.
Yeah, it's a hassle. Can be a hassle.
Yeah. Then Namrata suggested coffee, actually.
Okay.
And that was something that we both had a very shared passion for. And especially at that point in time in 2012, it was very difficult to find good quality coffee in Delhi. So you had some of the international chains, but they were more selling commodity coffee, very little differentiation.
Yeah, I think the whole
side.
artisanal movement never happened here until a few years ago, I think.
Yeah. So it was really mass chains, or there's imported coffee. Imported coffee has 100% duty.
Yeah.
So then the price
priced out for a lot of people.
It's unaffordable. So we started doing some research. We found that there were estates in India who were producing very high quality coffee, but they weren't selling it domestically.
Yeah, they were all exporting.
So Namrata started cold calling these farms. Luckily, she was able to get through to one or two. So then we went down south. We met them. We pitched them on our idea. Some were receptive, some were not. And
I'm sure those who weren't are regretting it now, possibly.
Yeah. So I think it was a big leap of faith on their part, I would say, because we're just two random people, no background in coffee, coming from Delhi.
Yeah,
saying
we just love coffee. We'd like to.
Yeah, tell us your best quality coffee and let us roast it and let us sell it under your name. Why they said yes, even now I kind of wonder. But we were fortunate that we got around 6 estates that we started working with. And we're really happy that even to this day, we still source coffee from those same estates.
And where in the south were these?
So that was in Coorg and Chikmagalur and Bilguri Hills were the first set of.
Yeah, that's where a lot of the good stuff still comes from, I think.
Yeah, so actually you can get good coffee all over India. So even in Kerala, even in Orissa, even in Andhra.
Yeah, I think Orissa is coming up quite well.
Yeah, so now there's a big focus on more of the non-traditional areas.
Yeah.
So it depends. You need to have very good quality plant material. Then you have to have the right climate conditions. Then you have to have the knowledge and expertise to process that
Just
coffee.
like wine.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly like wine. Yeah. So that's how it started.
So and where was this? Was the first cafe in Saidullah job, or
so actually the business started as an online business. We were lucky that Namrata's parents had an extra room in their house. So first we started in a bedroom on one floor. Then the business grew. Then they converted. They had a veranda that we turned into a roastery.
And who were the early customers?
So the early customers, I would say, is that they were people who already knew what specialty coffee was.
Yeah.
So we were kind of tapping into.
I remember I tried ordering. I don't remember whether if I got it. It's been a while, so apologies for that. But
yeah.
So there were people even at that time who were looking for.
Yeah, so people who had traveled abroad or lived outside for some time, they were looking for that type of coffee in India, and then they couldn't find it.
But how did you get the word out?
It was totally through word of mouth initially. There was no big because actually we didn't start it to start a business.
Yeah.
We started it
because
project, we wanted to have this type of coffee to drink. So we didn't do a business.
Isn't that the best way to start a business?
I don't know. Maybe, yeah, it's good good in some ways, maybe not great in others. But for us, it worked out. And so we would do a lot of these farmers markets, a lot of pop-up events, a lot of tastings, more on the ground sort of executions.
Yeah,
and
get people to taste it and then adopt it.
Because the great thing about coffee is it's very social.
Yeah.
If you're a coffee lover and you like a coffee, you're going to tell 10 other people.
Tell the world, yes.
So if you're able to really make a good connection with a few customers, they can really spread it very wide. So that's how we got some good traction initially, and then we started supplying wholesale to other cafes, restaurants. Actually, this chain, L'Opera, was one of our first customers.
Okay.
Um,
That explains why their coffee is what it is.
yeah, so actually now it's not, we don't supply them anymore,
Oh,
so then we sort of reached an inflection point. We had hired some people. We were actually profitable at that time, saw potential in the business, and so we had to decide, did we want to keep it kind of a mom and pop lifestyle business, or did we want to raise outside capital and scale it?
Yeah.
So that was actually a very big debate, whether we move to Goa and just set up a roastery cafe there and live a very calm, relaxed life. But we ended up feeling that the opportunity was too large, that we did have some first mover advantage. There was no one really doing specialty coffee before we started.
Yeah.
And it would be very easy for someone to come in and kind of take that away if we didn't scale the business. So that's when we started reaching out to investors, raised some capital, and then we moved to Sede La Job, which ultimately became our first cafe.
Awesome. I think just doing a deep dive on sourcing, and you mentioned going down to the estates and actually choosing and convincing the estate owners to sell you coffee. But I think it's true largely for all agriculture in India, and the ability to trace what you're consuming or what's on your plate. Making sure it reaches you, in your case, to the roastery in the shape and form that it needs to, with the quality not getting diluted. Was that has that been a challenge, and how we solved that?
Yeah, so I would say it's a challenge and an opportunity. So one of the good things is that before we started, people would never highlight where their coffee came from.
Yeah.
And they would even, so it'd be like, rain mist blend or cloudburst.
Yeah, exotic
blend.
names without
without ever
lineage
actually saying. Sometimes they would just say the state, sometimes they wouldn't say anything. And actually, when we first started meeting some growers, people were telling us, don't put the name of the estate on the packet, because then people will copy you. They'll go to that estate and they'll just source the same coffee. And that's ended up happening, but that's fine, right? Like
you've just grown the market.
So even that basic level of transparency wasn't in the common at that time. And that was very important to us, because ultimately the coffee that you get in your cup is only going to be able to be as good as what's happening at the farm.
Yeah.
There's no magic that we can do that if the coffee coming from the farm is bad.
We'll come back to that. I do have a question on that too. The magic that you guys do in the kitchen, or the roastery in your case. But yeah, so going back to sourcing.
So that's why it's very important for us to highlight that. Now, growing that means that you have to put in a lot of effort in terms of developing relationships with the farms, finding out, we have a team that goes throughout the entire country. So not just the South, but in Orissa, Andhra, they've even started working in the Northeast to identify estates that have good potential. And so it might be that right now you're kind of at the cusp of being able to supply us with specialty coffee. So we can suggest some interventions where if you do certain different practices at the farm level, then maybe the next year we can start buying from you.
So typically, what's the period of time that you curate or do these interventions?
So the harvesting happens now with climate change. Has become a bit more unpredictable. It used to be fairly predictable from starting in November and ending by Jan, Feb. Now it's starting as early as October and going up to March even. So.
And you see yields getting impacted too?
Yields are getting impacted because what's happening is there's rain that's happening at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And coffee is actually a very sensitive agricultural product. It needs just the right amount of rain to happen at just the right time. It needs the sun to come out at a certain time. It needs the right temperatures. And so now climate change is causing this to be very erratic. So it could be that on one side of the hill, people have the right conditions one year. On the other side of the hill, their crop is getting deeply affected.
But how do you solve for that? Because that's a reality, right?
So we now just have to diversify. So now I mentioned we started with 5 or 6 estates. Now there's more than 50 that we work with. And we also make sure that we try to be a long-term partner for the growers, so that even if you have a bad harvest one year, we'll still buy some coffee from you so that we maintain that relationship. Because ultimately, this is a very relationship-driven business.
Yeah. But do you see that, I guess, growing, that trust that you're trying to build with the grower, and possibly, I'm sure you're trying to give them more value by doing this. Is that getting reciprocated in terms of longevity of your?
Yeah, so most of the people that we source from, we have a very long-term relationship.
Yeah.
It goes both ways, right? That so if we support a grower for a certain amount of time, and then the next year they decide to,
Yeah, that's exactly what I was.
so then we'll stop working with them.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
and we're fortunate that there's enough growers right now that we can afford to do that. And also we've established a reputation. We've been doing this for 12 years now. So people know that when they're dealing with us, we operate in a very ethical manner. If we say that we're going to pay you, we'll pay you the rate that we agreed on.
Yeah.
So that's very important to us.
Who came up with the name?
Namrata, actually.
See it?
Namrata. So we wanted to. So a big thing for us was that people in India didn't even know that India grew coffee,
Yeah.
and especially
Yeah,
high quality
the perception
coffee.
is we're a tea drinking nation, right?
Yeah, and people didn't know that India has high quality coffee.
Yeah.
So it was really important to highlight the Indianness of it. And so Tokai is actually an old Malabar word for the tail of the peacock. So the logo is the
now that
peacock.
explains why you have the peacock on the
Yeah,
cups.
so peacock is the national bird of India.
Yeah.
If you go to coffee estates, you'll see peacocks flying around. So we thought it tied in nicely, and and actually she made that logo herself.
Oh, that's a lovely story.
Yeah.
So, I think I'm a huge fan. So is my son. So are a number of my colleagues at KPMG. I think the one question that always bothers me, especially when you think about QSR and the whole, I guess, eating out, whether it's eating out. How do you ensure the consistency that a customer gets every time he comes to the store and has that cup of coffee?
Yeah.
Because that's the make or break, right?
Yeah.
In terms of being able to scale this up and keep growing. What goes into it for you? What goes into every cup of coffee, I guess,
Yeah.
to get it to that level of consistency?
So there's many things that have to be executed well for that to happen. So one good thing is that if we're able to control the quality of the coffee that's going to the store, that solves a lot of it. So we have incredibly rigorous QC procedures on the roasting processes. We do color sorting of the green beans before they even go into the roaster. We have a roaster that's hooked up to a computer software, so there's a profile associated with each coffee, and there's certain tick marks that the roaster has to meet. Otherwise, it automatically flags it and says it roasts.
So is it mechanized? Is it automated?
It's not automated. The roaster has to control it, but they get to see in real time how the roast is progressing.
It's imaging essentially, or
it's basically, there's temperature probes throughout the
Understood.
machine.
Got it. Yeah.
So the temperature path and the rate of change on the temperature
Very
is what
interesting.
determines the roast. So that's one step. Then after that, it goes through another level of color sorting. Then every batch is tasted. So we have 4 Q graders, and Q graders is an international certificate to be able to taste coffee objectively.
And these are people you've trained up? Or?
Yeah, they're all
Yeah.
came, have grown through the system.
And where do you keep them safe? I'm sure there's a risk of them getting poached and.
So we're lucky in that because they've been working with us for a very long time. We've supported them and helped them grow in their careers. So there's at least some loyalty. That's also a relationship. Also they need to be compensated and treated well and given more opportunities. But it's a two-way path. And actually, one of I think he was the 3rd employee. So he was working at the house. He's actually become a Q grader. He's a guy from, grew up in a village in West Bengal, and just that's probably one of the things that I'm most proud of, that now he's one of the few Q graders in the country. But they oversee the quality of coffee at the roastery. Then now when it goes to the cafe, one is we invest a lot in equipment. So the quality of equipment that you put in there, that means that the consistency increases.
Yeah.
And then we also try and layer on some tools to help them automate processes. So the coffee grinder dispenses the exact amount of coffee. There's a automatic tamping machine that tamps the right amount of pressure.
Yeah, I've seen those, yeah.
The espresso machines dispense the right amount of water. So
does the water matter?
Yeah. It's a 95% of coffee is water.
So how do you take care of water?
So we've tied up a company that delivers a certain water profile across all of our locations.
Wow, that has to be a logistical challenge.
Then the last part is trading. So I feel very strongly that if you have that your team is able to deliver, let's say, a 6 out of 10 coffee, but a 9 out of 10 customer service, you'll be very, very happy.
Yeah.
Whereas if you deliver a 9 out of 10 coffee and the service
If
is 6 out
customer
of 10,
service isn't there,
you'll feel that this is not a good experience.
So this training is in-house, or?
Yeah, yeah. So it's been an iterative process. Before, we used to over-index on people who had coffee skills.
Yeah.
Now we
more on
over-index
the
on people
customer
who
experience.
are able to communicate well with people.
Yeah, if you can't tell it, you can't sell it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I think the other interesting thing that's happening is, and there's a lot of debate about it, right? That the whole premiumization of consumer brands in India.
Yeah.
There are, various schools of thought. One says that that's here to stay and it's growing. There's another alternate school of thought which says that that's still a limited sort of space and a segment of consumers. What's your view on that? And you've been successful in, again, selling coffee to a nation of tea drinkers or perceived tea drinkers.
Right.
I think a large part of the country drinks coffee and swears by it. So do I. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think ultimately, if India continues on the same growth path that it's on, premiumization will just accelerate. I don't see, when we started, the idea was that if you wanted something premium, you had to get it from outside. It had to be imported.
Yeah.
What's made domestically is
It's never
inferior.
up to the mark. Was thought never to be up to the
Yeah,
mark.
everything that's imported is of high quality. And now that I feel like that mentality doesn't exist anymore. There's been enough premiumization done in the right way across brands, within food, outside of food, that now you can get any high
I
quality.
think Indian brands are aspirational now.
Yeah. So
Whether it's premium spirits or coffee or
yeah, meat, cheese, beer.
Yeah.
It's across luggage. It's across categories.
But was it a challenge? How did you discover price points? I guess because again, coming from you can still get a cup of tea for a rupee in certain parts of the country today.
Yeah.
To convince people to part with a certain price for a cup of coffee.
So we're fortunate that tea is very much tied to that price point. Coffee has always had some increased pricing power because it's seen as more aspirational, cooler, something that maybe you can't necessarily make at home very easily. You have to have equipment or know-how. So one is that we don't get pegged to the price of tea. And the other is that even from when we started, there have been international brands who've been charging a higher price than what we charge.
Yeah.
So we're able to come in and price ourselves slightly below them and offer a very differentiated product than what they were offering.
Yeah.
So that was helpful for us.
And who's the chef here? I mean, maybe chef's the wrong word, but who cooks up the recipes for the blends and?
Yeah.
You guys do an amazing job at that.
So for a lot, actually, in the beginning, I used to roast all the coffee. So
Yeah.
for the first couple of years, I used to roast the coffee. Then it quickly became beyond my capabilities, and so we brought in some international experts who've been leading the roasteries. So for the first couple of years, it was someone from Australia, and now I think for 4 years now, it's been someone from New Zealand who's been overseeing all of our roasteries. And so now we have an incredible coffee team. If I was to go roast the coffee, people would start complaining because the quality would decline significantly. And as I mentioned, so then we have the Q graders, and they work with her, and so it's a very, very strong team who works on the coffee side.
And I think that's my next question. It's fascinating how, again, I've seen the brand evolve and even the formats that you sell coffee in now, whether it's at the stores or what you can take away from the store and do at home, and the blends. There's so many interesting blends that you've come up with. How do you keep that innovation going? Is there a secret sauce here, or a secret coffee that you get everyone to drink to keep going?
I think it's really about encouraging and empowering people throughout the organization, right? So some drinks have come from baristas at the cafes. The people who are visiting the farms are seeing some incredible processing techniques that then they apply, and we really encourage that to happen. If everything becomes top down, then it's very limited by sort of my exposure.
You can't scale.
Yeah, and I feel that also a good thing about coffee is that you can see what's happening around the world, and then you can just see what things are applicable to the context here.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very easy way to get inspiration. Sitting here in India, you can get inspired by what's happening in the US or in Europe or in Korea or Thailand, and then see, okay, this might be something interesting to try here. So now I do, my job is more to set guardrails rather than drive the innovation.
But is it a science? How do you blend flavors, right? And this may be a very laymanish question, but I always get fascinated by the different flavor profiles that
Yeah.
the pack says it
Yeah.
has, right? And you now have fruits and sort of exotic sort of spices. And is that real? You
Yeah.
blend that?
No, so it's not. That's not something that we create. That's something that's inherent in the coffee bean itself.
Yeah, much like wine, I
Yeah.
guess.
So now, so the raw coffee that comes from the farm has some flavor potential. Now, how we roast that coffee, that determines which of those
part of the flavor
flavors
comes out,
come out.
Yeah.
And then blending is about marrying different flavors together. So because there's only one harvest in India, we have to buy all the coffee at the start of the harvest and sell that down over the course of the year. And at the cafes, you want to have a consistent taste.
Yeah.
So what we do is we find different coffees from all over the country that have a particular flavor profile that we know when mixed together will yield the taste that we want from our coffee. So then throughout the year, those components change, but because different areas have somewhat similar taste profiles, we're able to maintain the quality or the taste profile across.
Yeah. I think a large part of your success, I guess, lies in also finding some great locations for opening the stores. Who does that? And then it's also interesting that you're doing a lot of different formats.
Yeah.
Is that by design?
No, so let me answer the format part first. Formats have been a bit of experimentation and a bit of capital constraint.
Okay.
So
We'll come back to that. I know you've raised some serious equity.
yeah, so in the past we used to be raising money in very small chunks.
Yeah.
So we never had, so everything had to be very tactical. So
But that's India, right? Frugal innovation and
Yeah.
making do with what you have and doing a fantastic job at that.
Yeah. So we had tried small cafes, we tried large cafes, we tried store-in-stores, we tried corporate kiosks, we tried operating coffee counters in someone else's restaurant. And so there were a lot of learnings that came along with that, and we've kind of narrowed down onto opening up 800 to 1,200 square foot cafes. That's sort of the sweet spot. If you go too low and too like the pure kiosk model, what happens is that it's almost as operationally intensive to run that kiosk.
Yeah,
as
and it's not the experience then, right? At least.
Yeah, so
you
I
need-
think, and there's no experience, and for at least now, coffee is for not enough people is it a totally functional.
Yeah.
Like they want the experience to go along with the coffee.
Correct. They want to sit down there.
They
and,
want to sit down there, they want to work there, they
have a
want to
chat,
use
do
the
work.
cafe. Yeah. So building a significant brand out of purely takeaway and kiosk is I think is going to be a challenge. Now on the location side, again because of capital constraints, we would always pick out of the way kind of locations. So we would be in good catchments, but not be at the front of the market. We'd be at the back of the market. What the idea was that people are willing to go a little bit out of the way for a better cup of coffee. They're not going to go across town for a better cup of coffee. And so we saw that actually that was working out for us. As we had raised more capital and had the freedom to take larger bets, we started opening up more prominent locations. And actually those did very well for us.
Yeah.
So there is a balance, right? So
I think it's kind of lent a very nice touch to the brand. I know you're saying it's not by design possibly, or maybe it is by design, but I think it just lends it, it differentiates the brand at least because you've got a range of different formats, all catering to the same, potentially the same customer segment, and you still get the same consistent coffee experience.
And I think that there is a little bit of fun in kind of going to the back of the market to find a cafe that's a little bit hidden.
And I think I can say this, you walk into a store and you know it's going to be different, not the same cookie cutter store that the other previous store that you went to was. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So now the challenge for us is to
how do you keep that going?
Scale it in scale that model without turning it into a cookie cutter approach, right? You don't want every place to look exactly the same, but at the same time, you should be able to walk into a cafe and feel it's a Blue Tokai. Yeah. So I think right now we have a bit of a hodgepodge, so we have to move it a little bit more towards streamlining it and make it more consistent.
You spoke of equity, you spoke of investors, you spoke of freedom in the same breath. Does that happen? So again, let me rephrase the question. Has raising equity meant you have to be more measured in your decision making?
So I would say we're very fortunate in that we found a group of investors who believed in the business that we were building and believed in our decision-making ability to drive that forward. So there's been very few cases where we wanted to do A and we've been forced to do B. And I think actually no cases. There have been cases where maybe we've been guided to do B, but we've been very stubborn and still done A. And for luckily, many, like, that's turned out to be the right decision. But, and I think, that's very important when you raise capital from someone, is that you're aligned on vision. And so we've definitely found a group of investors where we're very much aligned.
No, that's excellent. Congratulations. And I know the valuation has doubled in the last year or so.
Yeah, year and a half.
Congratulations again.
Thanks.
So moving on to, I think something you touched on earlier about the fact that, with climate change, it's becoming difficult to predict crop patterns, crop seasons. Are you guys doing anything to sort of, and is the government also thinking about that? But at your level, is there something you are doing to maybe invest in more climate resilient, seeds or varieties of coffee?
Yeah.
Or even the flavors, right? I mean, is there something you can actively do to, encourage the, I don't know if terroir is the right word for coffee, but
Yeah. No, so actually, most of the coffee is two varieties, Arabica or Robusta.
Yeah.
And actually, there's hundreds of different species of coffee. So in the last year and a half, we've been working with some estates who are doing experimental varieties. So that's one area, is to help them explore what other varieties of coffee can be grown that are economically viable and still meet the taste requirement that people have. And I think we've just scratched the surface of the potential there. So that's one big thing that we're doing. And then the other is that, are there different processing techniques that you can do? Because if you're, can we push one flavor profile more that's more, I would say, climate ready? Whereas if you're doing, like, a lot of, right now, these kind of funky, fruity coffees have become all the rage.
Yeah.
But the problem is they require to be out on raised beds in the sun. And now rain is coming at different times. So is there a way to be able to get a similar profile out of that coffee, but doing a different processing method? So working on things like that. Also working on, are there ways to grow coffee with less water? That's because water stress is another thing. So can we do waterless pulping? And we've worked with some organizations in some of the more rural areas where we've actually invested in some of the pulping equipment for them. So it's more strategic right now.
Right.
More tactical rather than we have an overarching strategy. The government is doing not a little bit. They're putting a little bit of research in terms of the alternate species, but I don't think that they've really woken up to what the scale of this challenge.
Yeah, but I think, is Indian coffee having its moment under the sun right now? Or?
In India, I would say in India it's having its moment. I was still, outside of India, it's still very much underappreciated, recognized.
I know you're trying to change that, right? You've opened a store in Japan?
So we've been in Japan for 2 years now. So before we were doing online business and pop-ups, now we've opened our first outlet a couple of months ago. So we'll be opening up a few more outlets as well. I think the Middle East is also another interesting area where there's a lot of potential for Indian brands and Indian coffee. But we just see so much more opportunity domestically.
Oh yes, it's a large enough market.
And it's just really scratched the surface. That in some ways going outside of India at this stage is a bit of a distraction.
So how many stores are you at right now?
Right now we have 130.
And what's the plan?
Open around 60 a year for the next couple of years. I think in 2.5 years, 3 years, we should be targeting 350 stores.
Wow, that is sizable growth.
Yeah. But so we opened even last year we opened 50 stores. So it's not that we want to go from 50 to opening up
so
200.
You've done it. It's a matter of replicating it.
Yeah, it's more a matter of fine tuning and executing rather than having to reinvent the playbook.
Anything interesting coming up on the product side? Again, you already do lots of innovation with packaging and.
Yeah. So I think one is that we've realized that a lot of people are very convenience based.
Yeah.
So how can we make the quality of coffee in the most convenient form, a cup of coffee in the most convenient form possible without compromising on the quality? So we see a lot of...
You don't want to be instant coffee, I'm sure.
No, so I don't have anything against instant coffee. I don't have anything against instant coffee. It's just I don't like the way that it tastes.
Yeah.
So if
you can get the same taste with...
If we're able to get the same taste in an instant format, and we've actually been spending more than a year and a half trying to do it. Still have not yet cracked it yet, but it's been done in other countries. It's just that the price point that they offer it is so high. So it's $4 for a cup of coffee. So if I'm going to pay $4 for a cup of instant coffee, I might as well go to a cafe. So is there a way to replicate that taste profile at a price point that's still mass premium, and not compromising on the quality. So that's the challenge there. But we recently launched our Nespresso capsules. So those are, we see a lot of interest and opportunity in that market, really focused on more of the ready to drink and ready to brew.
Yeah.
That's the focus there. Another interesting thing is that we're going to be launching a decaf coffee soon. So we do have a lot of people
All
coming
decaf
to our,
lovers should watch out for that.
coming to our cafes in the evening, and they want to have the taste of coffee without
but
the
not
caffeine.
the caffeine.
Yeah, so
We were talking about that too earlier, right? The whole, I think you made an observation that it's not really a habit that happens at a defined time during the day.
Yeah.
I think you see footfalls through the day. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think that's really more than the coffee. That's a testament to the bakery and the food offering that we have.
Oh yeah, we haven't spoken about that.
So I
that's a
think
brilliant, call it collaboration. Or now I know you own a chunk of that. You own.
yeah. So Charlie's as the bakery partner that we've had for a long time, and now that's been merged into one company. So we've acquired them, and then now it's just one company, and we work together.
It's a great combination, I would say.
Yeah. Bakery and coffee, it's a very, I would say, match made in heaven. Personally, it would be great if our business could be viable where we only sell coffee. But that's unfortunately not the
But is
reality.
that the way to go? Do you think all your stores are now going to be, similar formats in terms of having both offerings, or?
Yeah, so you have to have food, and you have the customer
I think it's
demands
the market,
it.
right? It's
the
not,
customer demands
the customer demands it.
Yeah, that same thing that I was saying with the kiosk model. The challenge is that people are not grabbing coffee and go enough people.
Yeah, they want to be there. They want that experience. They want to sit down and sort of do something there. And
yeah. So definitely the food offering is extremely important to the success of the outlets.
What's the most unusual demand customers made at a store?
Most unusual demand. So I don't know what it is. It's something that's it's very unusual to me. It's very common to everybody else. Is that Indian consumers like their coffee to burn their mouth, piping hot. Everything has to be piping hot. And actually, once you heat milk beyond a certain point, it changes the flavor, and it actually makes the coffee more bitter and tastes worse.
Yeah.
So if you have your coffee a little like 60, 65 degrees, that's when you kind of maximize the sweetness of the milk, and it really pairs well with the coffee. And so we serve that level of heat to the customers. And many times people will come back and say, no, I need a hotter.
My dad is one of them. He has to get his cappuccino at the right temperature, which you said it has to be.
Yeah.
Literally burning your
mouth. Yeah. So then we explain to customers that this is why we do it this way. Please try it. If you're really unhappy, then we'll make you a new one. And then we burn the milk and serve it to them. But yeah, that's a unique thing about India.
I think, Matt, it's amazing you're doing something that you're passionate about. And you're someone who's come back, been in another part of the world. You grew up there and then came to India. How's that experience been? And then there's a lot of work that the government's doing on Make in India and making sure that India has its rightful place as part of the global economy.
Yeah.
But what's been your personal experience having, like I said, grown up and lived outside India and then coming back and doing something so different from what's typically perceived to be a safe career?
Yeah. So I mean, I think there's so much opportunity. So if you're able to do things slightly differently, or there's so many gaps that maybe you would be common in other places that are not common here. So I say this often, that if I opened this business back in the US, I'd be one of 10,000 coffee companies there.
Yeah.
It'd be very hard to be differentiated. Whereas in India, there's so many gaps where you can find those what seemingly are niche things, and they can end up growing to become sizable businesses. I would say that it's still very difficult to start a business here for many reasons. The infrastructure is not so great. The taxation and licensing is can be a nightmare and is very burdensome. And I would say, especially in our industry, but this is common in many other industries, there's not a lot of innate talent.
That's a big challenge, I think, and we spoke about that earlier too, right? I think you said you train people in-house.
Yeah.
And a lot of we see a lot of our clients do that across the board, across different sectors, because clearly, going back to customer experience and making sure that it's, like you said, 9 out of 10 at least, if not 10 on 10.
So I mean, especially like if you look at a barista's job in the U.S. where I'm from, it would be like a high school kid or a college kid would do
doing
it
a
on the
side
part
gig.
time,
Yeah.
right? But they would be visiting restaurants and they would understand what good customer service is.
Yeah.
So they would already understand what kind of the basics are, and they would have probably the confidence to be able to communicate with people. But here, the people who end up that are working in these jobs, often it's their first job. They don't have any experience. And I would say what's unique here is that the socioeconomic background is very different.
Yeah.
Where the people who are working are coming from are very different from the customers, and that creates a divide. And like obviously you're going to feel shy, right? You're going to feel intimidated. So we have to help them and equip them to overcome that. And so that's a big challenge. And then at least in our industry, because there was no one doing specialty coffee, it's not like we could hire a roaster who had these skill set. We couldn't hire a master trainer to train everybody.
It weren't just hanging around.
You had to develop it from scratch, or in some cases, bring that expertise from
overseas.
outside and hire those people to work here. So I think those are the challenges, but the opportunity is immense.
Yeah.
And I think that there just feels to be like more energy here. So when I go back home to the U.S., I feel it just feels somehow like a place on decline. Whereas when you're here, this feels more.
I think that's thanks to coffee that you feed people.
Yeah. More energy.
Yeah. But so what? Again, going back to the same question, what's the number one challenge for scaling up going forward?
Going forward, again, it's people.
Yeah.
It's still people. So now at least we have strong training programs and very good second layer of management to help oversee. But at the scale that we're growing, we need to be able to identify, recruit, and retain the right talent.
And what can technology solve for you?
So technology, I think some point.
Because again, a lot of what you do is artisanal in its truest sense. So you can't replace the human element completely. But
so it is right now. It is possible. I would say that in our industry, we don't. So I think the future will be totally automated.
Yeah.
Right. You'll press a button and it'll give you an incredible cup of coffee. Probably even on the roasting side, that once you upload the profile, they'll have the technology that'll automatically do
more
it
precise,
every time. But at least in terms of the customer experience, I feel that as a specialty coffee chain, if you go to a place and the person is just pressing a button and giving you a cup of coffee, then I would feel as a customer a bit cheated. It doesn't give the same feel, and coffee is a very emotional thing.
Yes.
So I think for us, it's about can we layer on smaller pieces of equipment that help make the barista's job easier, but at the same time retain that essence of what specialty coffee is.
Doing it by hand.
Yeah. So there's a fine line there, and I think probably some point in the future that line will disappear. But at least right now, it's very much important to us.
My last question, and I think it's been fascinating talking to you. But again, what resonates for me is you've chosen to follow your passion, and you've created such a beautiful business out of it. What's your advice to people who are starting up today?
So I feel that I started this out of a passion. I started this because I wanted to do something with my hands.
So passion projects can be great businesses, right?
Well, it depends. It depends on what your definition of great business is. Because I thought I'd be involved in coffee all the time, right?
Yeah.
Be tasting coffee, visiting farms. My whole life would be around coffee. And as I mentioned earlier, now I don't really, that we have such a good team that I don't do the coffee part. And I spend most of my time at a desk job.
Yeah.
So what started as sort of something very different.
Is there another passion project coming up?
No. My advice is that make sure you enjoy the aspect of running a business.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether you're selling your passion or you're selling nuts and bolts. Ultimately, once you reach a certain scale, it's going to be about running that business.
Yeah.
So I'm fortunate that I actually enjoy the finance aspects, I enjoy the management aspects, I enjoy the non-coffee aspects as well, because that's where 90% of my time ends up going. So it was great to start off with a passion, and I'm very happy that I'm probably the number one consumer of Blue Tokai. If you would go on to Zomato.
Actually, I didn't ask you that. So do you ever have any other coffee?
I do when I'm traveling, or there's a new place that I want to check out. But
do they let you in?
Actually, some places when they recognize me, they
Yeah, they
ended
got to
up-
have your picture behind the till, right?
No,
Because
they
that's
end up just giving everything for free, and then I always feel so embarrassed. But actually, the interesting story is that because we've been growing, we have a cafe at this Ambience Mall,
Yeah.
and I went there and I went to the counter and I asked for a cortado, and the guy goes, "Excuse me, sir, do you know that this is a coffee? It has very little milk in it. It's only espresso. It has a little
So
bit
he's
of
trying
milk."
to teach.
And I was
Well,
so
again,
happy.
great customer
I
service.
was
He's
so
at least
happy
telling you, yeah,
because like he didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
So and he followed the SOP perfectly. And so that was really a great thing to see.
Awesome. Matt, thank you so much for coming here and having this conversation with me.
No,
I
my
wish
pleasure.
you all the best. I wish Blue Tokai all the best. Keep brewing, keep roasting, and keep doing the great stuff you're doing.
Thanks. Really appreciate it. Had a
Thank you
great
so much.
conversation.
Yeah.